All right, Elijah, I got your email. But by the way, when you send me a program, don't screenshot it, copy it and paste it. That way I can copy it and paste it into a program to see how it runs. I had to retype your whole program because I can't take a screenshot and put it in idle. But let's take a look at it here, see what I can help you out with. So looking at this, of course, when you run it, it has a bad input on line 3, which is your first statement there, because this is just a comment. Um, it looks like that you've gone online and looked at some other programs that do something similar and tried to integrate that, but not really understanding because the way that it's written, whatever program you looked at, is farther along than we are because it looks like you tried to you went define main, but then you also were trying to define a whole nother function because you can have more than just the main function. It looks like this was going to be like a different function, define, add two integers function, AB, return AB. You're making that way too fancy. If we just did that, then you'd have to have a different define main. And you got to put, you didn't have the colon after that. But still, I don't think this would run. It still has a bad input because it's confused. So let's do away with all of that mess and just make it more simple. Define main. All right, so we're just got our main function. Now when you run it, it still has a bad input because maybe because of that first space you have in there. Yeah, that first space. You got a space before everything on your screenshot. So I think that's going to create a problem too. But when you have your main function, everything inside there has to be indented like 4 spaces. I think it'll allow 2 spaces as well, but let's see what happens now when we run this. See, now it pops up a window and it just says 17 in it. What am I supposed to put in there? Am I supposed to put 17 or can I choose anything to put in there? Can I put Bob? You know, it says, whoop, nope, that's an invalid literal for an integer. Okay, it is supposed to be an integer. What you should always put in an input statement, and, you know, if you're confused about this, don't go looking on the internet before you go look at our lesson. So here was a sample in our lesson for 2.02 on how to do input statements. This one, our sample said num pizzas, so that's what they called their variable. Integer input, and here in quotes, they put some instructions for the person. So when you run the program and the box pops up, you know what you're supposed to put in that box. How many pizzas you want to buy. So looking at that sample in your program, instead of putting 17, I should say, let's see, let's get rid of the 17 and say enter an integer. So now when that box pops up, it'll say enter an integer. Now I can put whatever number I want. I can put 17 if I want. And then the second one, we need to fix it as well there. Instead of saying 2, enter another integer. All right, now the result equals, and you were calling that other function that was created because the other person that you looked at, whatever program you looked at, was creating a separate function. You're making it way too complicated. Okay, and again, but also I want to talk about this. Your variable names, sun1. What is sun1? You should use variables that make sense to you because if you get a really long program going and later on you reference sun1, it's like what was sun1? Now if I say number 1 and number 2, that makes sense. Oh, that was the number I had the person enter, number 1 and number 2. And instead of calling some other function, just add them together right here. Number 1 plus number 2. I'll just add them together. Run program. Enter an integer. 17. 2. Print is not defined. Oh, and print cannot be capitalized. You had a capital P, so that doesn't work. 17, 2, and it prints 19. So you had some confusion there because it looked like you were looking at somebody else's program that created a whole separate function just to add 2 numbers together, when this is all you have to do is just add 2 numbers together. All right, whatever this one's named and whatever this one's named, and I say add them. That's all you have to do. So you were way complicated and making it a lot more difficult than it needed to be. But give these good names: integer 1, integer 2, something. Give it a name that means something. So in a long program, every time you reference it, you'll always remember what it is. And if someone's reading your code, they can understand when they see that. Oh, number 1, that's where they had them enter a number, and then print result. And you can do that pretty simply. You can also make this fancier to go. Your first number was, and then put plus string number, so it prints what their first one was, and then print your second number was, and then number 2. I got to put parentheses on the end, not a quote. And then print the total after adding them together is, and then print plus string result. Now, this is just suggestions to make your program better. Now, if you add them together and print the total to the screen, that's fine, but that's the very basics. If you want to be a better programmer, add some little flair to it. So now if I did this, enter an integer, 55, enter another integer, 23. Your first number was 55, your second number was 23. The total after adding them together is 78. See, that's a little bit better output for a user using your program. Makes it more user-friendly, makes it a better program. You'll be able to give some detail rather than just printing a number. Because if they don't know what the program does, they'll have to figure out what happened. Oh, 78. Oh, that must be adding my 2 numbers together. So, all right, I'm going to send you this feedback, but don't, before you go looking on the internet to try to figure out how to do it, go look at our lesson. There's always samples in here. So here's 2 input statements. They made one an integer, one a float, and then they multiplied theirs together because their scenario was pizzas times cost. So they multiplied. But, you could change it to a plus sign just to add them together, because that's what our assignment was, just to add them together. And then they would print them. So there's usually always examples in our lessons that show you how to do things. So yeah, check back with Buzz, because it's always got sample programs in there that can help you. But yeah, it looks like you were trying to figure it out and found some out on the internet somewhere, and it was doing a lot fancier stuff. We'll be writing multiple functions, I think, before Christmas. So we'll be getting into that real soon. But don't overcomplicate things. I'll get this back to you, and good job on seeking help if you're stuck instead of just turning it in. I'd much rather you send it to me and let me know, so that way we can get a better grade when you get it turned in. All right. See you in class.